Good afternoon and welcome to the Year 1 Maths Parent Workshop. The aim of the workshop is to help you to understand how the children progress in maths from reception to Year 1, to understand how the 4 mathematical operations are taught in Year 1, and also how you can support your child with their maths homework. So for the progression as the children move from reception to end of Year 1, we explore topics in more depth in Year 1 through using the national curriculum links. The children move from at the very start of the year using lots of concrete, real resources in maths, like cubes, counting figures, the deans, to by the end of year using more abstract ideas, for example, numbers on a number line. Our lessons are also generally longer, and there is more opportunities for peer-to-peer learning, so doing partner work and helping to teach each other in Year 1 than there are in reception. So working our way through the 4 calculations, the first is that we work on in Year 1 is addition. So during our lessons on addition, we teach the children a range of vocabulary linked to addition, such as including add, plus, more, greater than, and count on. We start by adding objects in class. We then move on to drawing pictures to support understanding, and then we finally move on to counting forward on a number line. We also, during these lessons, check children's understanding of the concepts that adding can be done in any order, and also that it's easiest to put the largest number first when they are adding. In the box, you can see the section from our calculation policy that's linked to addition. You can see at the top there, we do work on missing numbers and to show that different symbols can represent a missing number. Then we mainly focus sort of from the middle of autumn onwards on using number lines. Initially, those that are numbered. So you would see there to do 7 add 4, children start with number 7 and do 4 jumps and they land on the answer. Eventually, children move on to constructing their own number lines, which means they can start adding bigger numbers. The teacher models this for them, and also whilst we're teaching addition, we might show how we jot numbers appropriate for larger numbers, just to show them different ways of working, getting ready for Year 2 towards the end of the year. The next operation that we look at in Year 1 is subtraction. Addition and subtraction we teach in every term, so this is the basics they need before they can move on, so we do revisit it throughout the year. So again, we teach a range of vocabulary linked to subtraction, including take away, minus, fewer, less than, and counting back. As with addition, we start using objects at the start of the year. We move to drawing pictures and crossing them off, and then finally to the number line. We also learn how to find the difference between the 2 numbers by counting up, and we check the children understand that they cannot subtract in any order, and also that the answer is always smaller than the number they started with and they subtract. So again, in the little box you can see the relevant section of the calculation policy. So we start with pictures. So you can see there the coins have been drawn and then they've crossed off the 4 that the child has sent, so you can count how many are left. We then move on to using dots to represent things rather than drawing the pictures. You might circle or cross off. Again, we look at missing numbers and that you can use different shapes to represent a missing number in a number sentence. And then at the bottom, you've got the number line showing how we find the difference. So they circle both the numbers and then count the number of jumps in between to find their answer. Multiplication, which we just are about to teach this term in Year 1, so in the spring term, once they've now embedded a bit more addition and subtraction. Again, we start by looking at the range of vocabulary linked to multiplication, so times, repeated addition, lots of, and they will start this half term multiplying using objects and drawing pictures to support their understanding. So we use arrays to teach that. You will make sure they understand by the end of the year that multiplication can be, like addition, can be done in any order, but also the differences between addition and multiplication, which is often where misconceptions occur earlier in their learning, particularly as the symbols are quite similar. And again, you can see in the box the section from the calculation policy. So it's showing you using pictures at the start. So there are 3 sweets in 1 bag. How many would there be in 5 bags? So they actually draw the bag. And the teacher might model using a number line to help them to do this. We sometimes have bead strings, so they can use those to multiply and put them in groups. We solve problems involving multiplication a bit later in the year, again using objects or drawing things to help them, and arrays with the teacher supporting. So you can see there they've drawn 4 lots or 2 lots of 4 or 4 lots of 2 in the groups there, and then they've shown at the bottom you have to add them all up, and that would give you 8 things. Also, under multiplication, we start to look at times tables this term in a bit more detail. By the end of the year, most children need to learn the 2, 5 and 10 times tables, and we also look at doubles as part of multiplication, so doubling numbers up to double 10. In reception, they will have started to look at doubles, certainly up to double 5. So again, it shows you on here that we would use arrays and repeated addition. So we use pictures and hands-on activities. They do a bit of grouping and sharing to help them with that. We introduce some vocabulary, the vocabulary linked to multiplication and division. This is showing you some of their targets. So they have to be able to use doubles up to 10. They learn number bonds. Don't really have formal written methods so much in year 1. It's more about doing pictures to help them. They also need to count in 2s, 5s and 10s, and then they need to be able to solve 1-step problems. And our final operation that we look at, which we will briefly look at in the spring term, but we'll look at in more detail in the summer term, is division. So again, we introduce the vocabulary that they may come across, so divide, share and group. We start by sharing objects and drawing pictures to help us. We link this also to halving, that when you halve, you share things between 2 people. And we'll check they understand that you cannot do division in any order, and that when you divide things, all the groups have to be equal and fair. So on the calculation policy, again, you can see here the way that we've used pictures to share the dots. Also, we might do a bit of grouping and put them into the circles of groups. They will do a little bit of work on 1-step problems involving division, and again draw pictures to help. And we would be halving numbers to 20 as the inverse of doubling numbers up to double 10. So again, there aren't formal written methods for division in year 1. We're just starting to look at it, so we would do more pictures to help them. Ways you can help your child to be more confident in maths and with the homework. Practicing number bonds initially to 10 and 20. By the end of the year, we will be working on number bonds up to 100. So a number bond is just the pair of numbers that total, they make the given total. So for example, number bonds for 10 would be things like 5 add 5, 3 add 7. For the pairs of numbers that make 100, initially we'll look at the 10s. So like 90 add 10, 70 add 30. So to help with that, you can play games such as pairs games. So if you've got the card, you can make little cards to make up a pairs game, for example. Dominoes you might be able to use to match up the amounts. Can they put them together to make 10, for example? There are lots of online games for number bonds as well that are free. Times tables. So practicing the times tables, the children's Numbots login also gives them access to Times Tables Rockstar. So although we don't have formal tasks on there at the moment for year 1, they can go in and practice if they want to in a fun way. And again, there's lots of online resources for times tables and lots of games that are free out there. Again, you can support them with resources, for example, a number line, they could make one with you, 100 square. Using practical resources like coins to practice adding money. If you have a ruler at home, they can practice things like measuring. Looking for shapes around the house, for example, 2D and 3D shapes, all those sorts of things. And finally, asking your child to explain how they've solved a problem. If they can explain how they've done it, it shows they've really understood the method they've used. Often in year one, children will tell us at the start of the year they just know it, and then so we do a lot of work on the vocabulary and explaining exactly how they've solved things. Thank you for listening. I hope that's helpful. If there's anything in there that doesn't make sense, please feel free to try to come and catch us at the start or the end of the day, and we're more than happy if we needed to make arrangements to have a longer chat to go through bits and pieces. And yeah, we're here to help, and thank you for listening.